You're worried, frustrated, confused, or you can't seem to gain traction. Or maybe you're in the middle of your career and things are going well, but you don't like all the articles in the business press about how your entire industry could be in trouble. You're thinking you should do something before it's too late, but you aren't exactly sure what. Or perhaps you're part of an industry that is or has imploded. In these cases and countless more you could think of that involve how work is now in flux, it's not your fault. The world has changed. The fact is sad and more than a little bit scary, but there's no doubting that it's true. The way we earn our living is in the process of changing forever. Here we're going to talk briefly about why, and then in depth about what you can do, not only to cope, but thrive. We know the approach we're about to describe is successful because it's based on a proven method that has helped hundreds of thousands of people. What has worked for them will work for you. Been to a music store lately? Drop off any photos to be processed? Used a payphone? Read an afternoon newspaper or been able to find a local morning one if you live in a small or even mid-sized city like New Orleans? Bought a printed map? Placed a call from your hotel room through the hotel's phone system? Used a travel agent to book a routine vacation? Probably not. And the trend of entire industries disappearing is only accelerating. Desktop computers are endangered. And when it comes to phones, so are landlines and manufactured mobile housing due to the glut of foreclosures on traditional homes. Faxes are now as quaint as dial-up internet connections or rotary phones. The list goes on and seems to grow longer by the day. In fact, it's probably easier to name the tiny handful of professions and industries that will remain unchanged in the next 20 years than it is to write down the ones that will be altered radically. All this upheaval is likely to throw you and anyone else who isn't prepared out of a job. When some people hear that, they say we're being hyperbolic. Or, sure, it happened in the industries you listed, but it won't happen in mine. Sticking your head in the sand isn't the greatest strategy for preparing for the future. Hoping all this turmoil will pass you by isn't a strategy. But most people are not closing their eyes to what's going on. They're aware, but they simply don't know what to do. 10 years ago, if you lost your job at Kodak or Polaroid, or thought you soon would, you'd head over to some place like Fujifilm. However, when entire industries like photo finishing virtually disappear, that's no longer an option. And for those of us who are worried, we just don't know what a new alternative is. Like a deer caught in the headlights, we're frozen in place when it comes to thinking about how radically our professions could and most definitely will change, and what will happen to us as a result. Sure, we know the one currency we all need to accumulate is knowledge, but by some accounts, knowledge is doubling every 5 years or faster, which explains why all these traditional industries and businesses are being replaced by new ones. As a consequence of this information explosion, and there's no other word for it, what you know rapidly becomes obsolete. What's a person to do to survive, let alone thrive, in this environment? Does this sound familiar? We didn't have a typical reader in mind when we began to write the book, but our guess is that Linda Schwartz, who we discovered in the course of our research, is representative. Schwartz, now in her late 40s, had been a partner at one of the major accounting firms for 13 years when she started to wonder if that was how she really wanted to spend the rest of her working life. I did a spreadsheet to see what the benefits were to staying with the firm, and they became quite substantial if you stuck it out to age 50, she says. But I found myself constantly referring to that spreadsheet as I went about my days. By the time I was 47, I realized 3 more years was a very long time. Ultimately, she left the big firm and started her own consulting practice. It was very liberating, she says. It allowed her the time to spend with her children who were adjusting to middle school, to assist a father-in-law.